Hi, this is Teresa Martin from Lower Cape TV, and in this special episode of Legislative Update, I am here remotely with State Senator Julian Cyr. Hi, Julian, welcome.
Hi, Teresa. Good to be with you. Albeit remotely.
I know,
Oh,
I feel like,
studio, huh?
yeah. So I know the Senate has been incredibly busy. The whole legislature has been busy. We have things with MCAS and things with rental relief, and I mean, just a huge mountain of things. So maybe you could kind of walk us through some of what is in play and some of what has already been passed.
Sure. So we've been very busy, and we've been doing almost all of our work while trying to adhere to social distancing. As public people, right? We're actually quite could be quite efficient people in spreading COVID-19. So
That's right.
I actually haven't been. I was last in Boston on March 10th, and actually haven't been there since. But we've been working almost twice as hard than we usually do, and we keep up a pretty good pace to respond. That started off with a $15 million appropriation to bolster our public health system. We then moved quickly. We've actually passed, and the governor has signed into law, 2 unemployment bills, legislation to help our municipalities navigate a whole host of statutory requirements they have, everything from when town meetings and municipal elections can be, to planning decisions, right? There's timelines established in law around how towns get back to someone if they want to build a project. Those are all sorts of things that we had to make a fix on. And we've been keeping it up. Last week and this week, the focus has really been on education, and it's been on housing. So on the education front, we do have an agreement in the Senate. We're recording on Thursday today. The Senate is going to be taking this up later today and passing it. There will be no MCAS for this year, so we're not going to be doing.
Wait, say it again. No MCAS. None.
Well, no MCAS. So there's 2 parts to this, and one is the assessments, and so we're not going to be doing assessments in 2020. We don't know when schools will be back in. It very well may be that we don't have schools go back in this year. But even if they did go back in, we felt that, I think a number of us felt that it was not the best use of instructional time to be just cramming kids with this test. I think we do a little bit too much testing anyway. I was taught, I was a student, right?
Right.
Not that long ago, and just even the shift from when I was there till now has been substantial. But so no assessment. The piece that we figured out and will be included in this legislation is around what's called the competency determination.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fancy word for graduation requirement. And so that's going to be left to the commissioner of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to figure out what to do with those students. These are seniors, so seniors who are preparing to graduate who have yet to be able to pass the MCAS. We think that's about 4,000 students. Every year there's about 1,000 students who do not ultimately meet the competency determination. And we're going to make sure that those students have another opportunity to take the MCAS. They've had that opportunity, but we're going to leave it up to the department to figure that out. But certainly the no MCAS and no assessments, I think it's going to be a big relief. I think a lot of students were really, really anxious about that, and their families were. I know it's a difficult time if you're trying to keep up with your education right now, and so we just felt that wasn't the way to go.
Well, I know that for the competency, you typically take it in 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pass, then check. If not, you can keep taking it over and over.
Yeah, and so you can take it 2 more times. 2 more times in your in 11th grade, and then twice again in 12th, or 3 times again in 12th grade, I believe. All those opportunities have actually happened, but there's going to be 1 more opportunity.
Okay.
And I actually believe that there's going to be an opportunity actually for students to take that test this summer as well. So we're trying to give them every opportunity we can.
Right.
But the bigger news for most folks is no assessment of the pass, which is a huge relief for students, for parents, and for teachers.
But the logistics of it would just be overwhelming.
Well, yeah, and look, it's really hard. And I talk to my friends who have kids at home, some of whom are working, some of them aren't. It's really hard to be trying to educate your children and work remotely. It's a really challenging time for family. Those friends of my friends with kind of younger kids, right? Are definitely the ones who they tell me at least that let's say this, they definitely enjoy a glass of something in a Zoom call or a FaceTime or something after bedtime. So the second big piece that we're working on, and we're going to hopefully get done by the end of the day today, this is the day we're recording, is getting people relief around housing. There are so many people who are not going to be able to make rent or haven't been able to make rent on April 1st or won't be able to make rent on May 1st. And there's a lot of people with their mortgages who are in the same boat. So the House took up and passed legislation last week. The Senate is taking up. We're largely taking up what is in the House bill, which is a very good progressive bill. Usually on these sort of policies, the Senate is the one that's kind of further out aggressive here. The House was, which was wonderful. And so we're taking that up. It includes a number of provisions to provide protections for people. I've got a whole list of what's in it. I just have to pull it up. So we include a freeze on residential evictions until this crisis is over. We also have language in there stopping commercial evictions, especially for small businesses. The Senate adds in a mortgage forbearance, which is something that a lot of homeowners, especially homeowners who are struggling to make the mortgage, could use. So that and there's also a freeze on foreclosures. This is a big deal. It's going to help a lot of people. And really, I think we just need to press the pause button while we're responding to this public health crisis. I think people have a lot of anxiety, rightfully, a lot of anxiety about what's going on. They're worried about their health, the health of their loved ones. And so this really puts a pause button both on any adverse actions that either a landlord or a bank could take against someone who can't pay the rent or can't pay the mortgage, and then providing some help. So this is a big deal, and I think it's going to be done by the end of today, but we'll find out. Certainly legislating in these times is difficult. We're inherently, right, our job is inherently to be a deliberative body. So doing that remotely certainly has its challenges, but we've worked really, really hard at communication. And to date, we've been able to pass a number of bills by unanimous consent, which often doesn't happen. So we're really kind of working to rise to the moment.
Well, speaking of homes and places to live, are you addressing homeless populations at all, which is, I know, a big risk area? I know in Western Mass, Hampshire College is doing some work with some of the communities to try and find some solutions.
Yes, and actually just before we're speaking now, I was on a lengthy conference call with a whole host of stakeholders and organizations on Martha's Vineyard, trying to figure out how we're going to address the needs of the population there. So we're looking at this in a number of ways. First, for individuals who are homeless or may become homeless, who either test positive for COVID-19 or are likely COVID-19 positive, they're waiting for that test. Yeah. We're working, and actually have worked to create an opportunities for what's called isolation, essentially a place where they can recover and not infect anyone else. In Hyannis, there's motel assets that between Cape Cod Healthcare, the Duffy Center in Marshall County, we're able to prop up. We're working to get more money for that. Then we're also looking at people who may need to be quarantined, right? So someone who, for people who are experiencing homelessness, they think they may have been exposed. They don't want to, infect anyone else. They need to be quarantined until either symptoms show or that window, that 2-week window passes. So also trying to provide resources there. We're working to depopulate the homeless shelter that's also in Hyannis at St. Joseph's House, to comply with new guidelines around how to provide sheltering, but also comply with social distance. And then really looking at resources, for us here on the Outer Cape and Lower Cape, how do we get some resources to keep people in their homes? And so working extensively with the Homeless Prevention Council, which is based in Orleans. So there's a lot of work around homelessness. I think we're trying to prop up these resources. I think the most important thing for, look, whether you're someone who's experiencing homelessness or may become homeless, or, you're someone who's sort of between the shuffle, right? We've got a lot of people here who, maybe they have an affordable winter rental and then move into the campground in the summer.
Right.
We've also identified the need to look at campgrounds, especially for people who rely on campgrounds for their housing in the summer. So we're trying to flag all of these issues. How do we do this is, in the Senate, we have a working group made up of 8 senators. I was appointed to that working group. We meet every morning. We have an 8:30 a.m. call every morning. It's led by my colleague, Joe Comerford from Western Massachusetts. And we elevate these issues to the command center and work to navigate them through and get some attention on them. And homelessness has been, this week has been one of my primary focus.
I know it's ironic telling people to shelter in place, and if you don't have a place to shelter in, what do you do? Or, as you mentioned, people on the Cape whose winter rentals are ending.
Yeah.
What is going to happen? That's it's insane.
Well, and especially because we're looking at the potential. This is going to persist longer than May 4th. It just is. Yeah. Speaking with a friend today who's an infectious disease doctor in Boston, and the way that he described it is that we're going to. He said this is not going to end, clearly or in sort of a very sort of definitive way, right? We're going to have to change how we live our lives, even when we open things up. But really what this pandemic has shown is, for the people in our communities who are most vulnerable, who are living paycheck to paycheck, they are the ones who have struggled most. And they also are these are some of the people who are doing the most essential work, right? Keeping our grocery stores open, and pharmacies, and not to mention all the healthcare workers, yes, our doctors and nurses, but also, other frontline staff as well. And so, I'm very mindful of that. But I really see, look, it was hard enough to make a life on Cape Cod or on Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket before this crisis. And it is really compounding those challenges.
So what are some of the other items that are coming up, say, going into next week? What are you looking at?
So we're looking at several pieces. One is around how do we help people with safety net programs and how do we expand access to those safety net programs. The administration has actually done so via executive order and has provided some help. We're looking there. There's a number of other municipal issues that need to be addressed. Actually, I've been working on issues around notaries. If you're anyone who does law or banking or finance, those notaries are required to ensure that this is your signature.
Right. It's really you. That's right. You certify you've seen them.
Yeah. So there's like a myriad of, right, that get raised. We're certainly very much in touch with our healthcare infrastructure. Cape Cod Healthcare has done a remarkable job. I am on many of these calls statewide where we're hearing from all sorts of hospitals and health systems. And the work of Cape Cod Healthcare, their ability to prepare for this, to partner for our community with our community health centers like Outer Cape Health, who's been doing testing. Mm-hmm. We are in, one of the most reassuring calls I have every week, and I'm on a lot of calls and a lot of conference calls, is with, our healthcare here. I also think the other strength that we have is, that we're used to working in a regional way, right? Yeah. We have a functional county government. Our towns provide mutual aid with first responders. So, we're used to doing that. I think that's an advantage for us as well here. We're looking at the needs of first responders. Liability is something that's coming up. Mm-hmm. Liability for healthcare workers and others. So there's a lot on the agenda. And I just want to say, I really want to encourage people, please reach out for help if you need it, or advice, whether you're someone who needs assistance navigating unemployment, a small business who needs help applying for the federal assistance that we have, someone who's just wondering how do I pay the rent? What are some resources I can turn to? If you go to senatorcyr.com, it's senatorcyr.com. It's a one-stop shop for all sorts of information that we have. We're trying to get out as much information as we can to people that's accurate and reliable. But please don't be shy about asking for help. Now this is a time where people really need it, and we're here to help. And I have a wonderful team that's helping me do that. So just please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Great. Thank you very much. And I'm hoping we can come back and continue the conversation a little bit about some additional topics, because there is just so much happening at the state level, local level as we all come together to deal with this public health emergency.
Yeah.
So this
Well,
is, thank you very much, State Senator Julian Cyr. This is Teresa Martin from Lower Cape T with Legislative Update.